Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to share my infertility journey and how NaPro technology helped me discover how I wouldn't have to get rid of my reproductive organs like IVF doctors told me to. I have procrastinated making this video. It is not easy to make, but I have felt compelled by the Lord that He wants me to share. And really the main reason is that it was what somebody else shared with me on Instagram, somebody I didn't know, that helped us solve one of the biggest missing pieces to our fertility journey. But if this video caused you any anxiety at all, please turn it off, because I have been there 1,000,001 times. I've been down 1,000,001 rabbit holes, so I understand. So I'm really gonna start from the beginning. In 2018, me and Andres, my husband, got married, and at the time I was on NuvaRing, which is birth control, and I wasn't on it very long. I didn't like the way that it made me feel, and if I knew then what I know now, I probably wouldn't have taken hormonal birth control, and everybody has to make the best choice for their body. I just didn't like the way that it was affecting my body and mind. I got off the birth control and we did natural family planning from there. It's funny, I look back at my prayer journals from that time. I was literally praying, Lord, just give me some time with Andres. I want to enjoy the time as dual income, no kids. I want to enjoy that life as much as I can. Now looking back, that's so funny, because boy has He answered that prayer with a yes. We've had so much time. In January 2019, so 8 months into marriage, we find out that Andres is getting deployed with the National Guard. Find out he's getting deployed for around a year, and he was gonna take some time to train. So we found out in January, and he would be leaving in October of the same year, so 2019. So during that time we tried to avoid pregnancy, but now looking back, I think we probably should have gotten pregnant. Who knows? Around the same time, I was struggling with my cycle, was not having a period, and so I knew there were underlying issues, but I didn't know how serious they were. And so I was really going to take the time of his deployment to work with some physicians to try to figure it out, and we wanted to start trying as soon as he got back from deployment. I think that I wasn't having a period because I was working out aggressively 2 times a day leading up to our wedding to try to get ready for the wedding, and I would have done things totally different now. It was not healthy. I was not eating enough. I was not nourishing my body. I was putting so much stress on my body from workouts and not eating enough that was part of it. Also, I had a lot of other health and gut issues. I cut out gluten and dairy in 2018, and that got rid of all my acne, and that got rid of a lot of inflammation, but I still was struggling with the cycle aspect of it. And that really brought me a lot of anxiety. Just as a woman, you expect to have a period every month, and when you don't, you know something's off. So when he leaves, I start seeing an OB, and she was great, but I sometimes believe that conventional medicine doctors, you know, they have their specialty. They deliver babies, and a lot of times their specialty isn't fertility, or it is, but it's really just take letrozole or Clomid and you should get pregnant. There's just so much more to that. And a lot of times also they'll say try getting pregnant for a year and then come and get a hormone workup. Now looking back, like, I just don't agree with that method. I've listened to a lot of podcasts, I've done a lot of research. A lot of functional fertility doctors suggest you actually start getting your body prepared 3 to 6 months before even trying to conceive, and that involves doing hormonal workups, getting your nutrition right, fueling your body. I was under eating severely for years and years, and now I'm paying the consequences of that even to this day. I just know that getting the right nutrients for baby is super important. So I started working with this OB. She immediately thinks that I have PCOS because I don't have a period, but now I know more about that, and there are other factors like enlarged ovaries. A lot of times women are overweight. A lot of times they have more body hair. They have the enlarged ovaries, the string of pearls in their ovaries. It's just the way that your ovaries look. She said that I had some of that, and that indicated to her that I was a lean PCOS, but she did not check my insulin or my glucose, which is a very common thing when you have PCOS. A lot of times your insulin and glucose are off. She did not check those, and she slapped a prescription on me, metformin, and I think metformin is absolutely wonderful in the right case, but I was on that for many years without even having my insulin and glucose checked. So that's something that I would have done differently. Had my ovaries checked for enlargement and just look at more symptoms. She also checked my thyroid, and she only checked my TSH, and that was normal. But then I started working with a functional medicine doctor too, to work with my gut issues, dizziness, fatigue, so many other things. I'm gonna read actually the panel that she did for my thyroid, just so you can see the difference. So OB does my TSH, functional medicine doctor does TSH, free T4, iodine, T3, reverse T3, TPO, and thyroglobulin antibody. So this obviously gives a much bigger picture. I can't explain exactly how thyroid works because it's very complicated, but basically all of those other things were depleted and working so hard together to make my TSH normal. So yes, my TSH was normal, but all of those other things were not. They were either too high or too low. So she put me on a low dose of thyroid medication, and around the time that I was put on thyroid and metformin, I got my period back. I was at 50-day cycles, so around, well, 55 days, so still not normal, but I was like, okay, it's either the metformin or it's the thyroid medication. I don't know, but I was just so thrilled that after 2 years, I was finally getting my cycle back. I have no idea if I was ovulating or not. I was not tracking that at the time. Another important factor, so Andres returned in August 2020, and this was right after I had just gotten put on the medication. So I had the de-stress of him coming home, I had the 2 medications, and my period comes back. And so I think a lot of stress was on my body just from all of the years of working out, of him deploying, and also this was during 2020. So I was in my little tiny apartment by myself from the time COVID started, during lockdowns, all of that. I'm really thankful for that time because I was able to get closer to the Lord than I ever had before, because I was just forced to basically do nothing but be in the Word and be in prayer. He comes back from deployment, I get my period back more regularly, and then we pretty much start trying right away. The very first month that he's back, we want kids right away. It's been, you know, a couple of years now, and I was just looking forward to that, and so was he. From August 2020 to August 2022, we try to conceive with no yes in sight. And that was really hard. The first year goes by, you're like, okay, well, they say, it's pretty normal to go a year, but then I had also had the previous struggle with my period, and I just kind of had a feeling, I think it was honestly the Lord's grace, I had a feeling it was gonna take a while, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I just really think that the Lord prepared my heart for that. In 2022, somebody writes on my Instagram, I think I shared something about infertility, and somebody writes on my Instagram, some girl who doesn't even follow me, that I should get an HSG x-ray to check to see how my tubes look. I had never heard that before. I had been working with this OB, and she knew I was struggling, but she never brought that up. So I wrote her a message on my chart, and I was like, hey, can I get an HSG x-ray? I just want to see if everything's okay with my tubes. And she was like, yeah, sure. She sends me to the hospital to get an HSG. It's done by a nurse practitioner, and then a radiologist would look at the results. Well, the NP who did it, she seemed confident in the procedure, but she didn't seem confident in the results while she was doing it. She didn't know. So basically in an HSG, I'm not going to explain this exactly right, but you can look it up. Basically, they put something up your cervix, and they put dye in, and it blows up a balloon in there, and then the dye goes through your tubes. I think this is right. The dye goes through your tubes, and if the dye flows through and spills out completely, that means that your tubes are open. But if there's any resistance, if they don't see the spillage, then they're probably blocked due to many different reasons. Well, she thinks that it spills out from one side, but she thinks that one side is blocked, and so she wants the radiologist to look at it. The radiologist looks at it and says basically the same thing. They can't really tell what's going on, and that I need to go to a fertility doctor. I make an appointment with a fertility doctor that my OB recommends. And just one little side note that I think is important. When I went to this fertility doctor, they kept pushing on me that they wanted to do genetic testing, and I did not want to. They wanted me to see what predispositions I might have and if there might be any complications, potential complications. They kept every nurse that would come in the room, we need to do genetic testing. And I just said no. And you know, normally it's kind of hard for me to resist when a doctor that I know has a lot of knowledge is pressuring me, but I just really did not want the genetic testing. I'm going to try for a baby regardless. I'm going to keep my baby regardless. So I just want you to know you do not have to say yes to anything. They eventually left me alone and I didn't get the genetic testing, but I just wanted you to be aware that that might be something that you need to pray about and talk with your spouse about when you're going to these fertility doctors. So anyways, besides that, they do an ultrasound and my ovaries look great. Everything looks fine, but I didn't get to talk to the nurse practitioner that day, and she was gonna look over my results from the radiologist. I go home, she looks at my HSG x-ray results, she messages me on my chart and she tells me, you just need to take your fallopian tubes out and do IVF. It was simple as that. And I was absolutely devastated. I was not expecting that news. I had no idea what was going on. I just was shocked that somebody would not care about me that much to where they would just send a message to get reproductive organs removed with no care in the world. Like it was just something they do every day. It was shocking to me. I mean, yeah, it was just shocking to me. And I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. You know, sitting here thinking about it, I hadn't thought about this in a really long time, but I was standing in my kitchen right back there weeping after I got this message. We had decided we didn't want to do IVF before this. I actually told the fertility doctor that day, like we weren't interested in IVF right now. It just wasn't the route we wanted to take for several reasons. I was just defeated. As I'm standing in the kitchen weeping, I hear God's voice in my head, probably for the first time, like with a very clear sentence. I've heard from the Lord many ways through scripture and stuff, but this was different. I heard, I am going to do it. I'm very careful to share that because I think we have to be very wise with saying that the Lord told us something, but this is something that I think that He gave me for peace. Along with Matthew 11:28, come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take up my yoke. My burden is easy and light. I'm gentle and lowly in heart. And then Luke 1:45 was one that always stood out to me. Blessed is she who believed that the Lord would fulfill His promises to her. And though that line was to Mary at the time, and I am not in the same situation as Mary, I was able to circle that and see it as a promise to me because I know that He loves me. And I know that He pointed that out to me for a reason, and I don't know His plan. He works all things together for the good of those who love Him and who are called according to His purpose, and to bring Him glory, to bring Him so much glory. And so I hope that this video brings Him glory today. So all of that happens, and I realize I need to get a second opinion. Thank the Lord for a second opinion. And I get another recommendation. I go to this man, fertility doctor, IVF doctor, but he was nice and as caring as you know he can be. He sees people all day, every day. He looked at my x-ray, and I guess because he was so confident in what he said, it gave me so much more assurance. He said that my right tube was totally blocked, but that he thought he could save my left tube. And you have to have fallopian tubes to conceive on your own. You don't have to have fallopian tubes to do IVF. So just note that. I pray about it a ton, and I just feel like I have to do this surgery. There's fluid that builds up when your tubes are blocked, and even if I were to get pregnant on the left side, the toxicity from the fluid from the right tube completely kills embryos. It's crazy. Like all of it is just, our bodies are insane. So I just decide I've got to do the surgery, and me and my husband talk about it a lot. We pray about it. We decide to do it. He's able to get me in fairly quickly, so I scheduled surgery for October 2022. We go in for surgery, and something in the back of my mind, like I didn't really know anything about this at the time. I just knew that I wanted to keep my left tube no matter what. Like God just really laid that on my heart, and I believe that was all Him. The day of surgery, he says, okay, if I go in there and I see that your left tube, because a lot of times HSGs can be very off, they're not conclusive. He says, so what if I get in there and your left tube is not viable, it's messed up. Do you want me to take it out? And I said, no, I want to make sure that I have one of my tubes intact. Goes in for surgery, he takes out my right tube, he leaves my left, and I wake up from surgery and he tells me it went well, but that my tube is 33% open. And I didn't really know what that meant. I was in a complete anesthesia fog, and I just wasn't really sure. I didn't feel super good about anything, but we had a follow-up appointment with him, and he said that he still thought that we could likely get pregnant on our own, and to do 3 months of letrozole, which is something that helps you to ovulate, but he wasn't gonna like monitor, he just wanted me to just take it each month. Now looking back, I did so many rounds of letrozole, and I do think that that was not good because it can cause more scar tissue and things like that. So anyways, and then he says if I don't get pregnant in 3 months, which I thought was very short, that I should come back and do another HSG to see if the surgery was successful. 3 months go by, nothing. I go back in and I have another HSG. And oh, I should mention, if you have blocked tubes, they can be really painful. The first one was uncomfortable, but I didn't see it. It wasn't that bad. So I was like, are my tubes blocked? Are they not? But I do have a high pain tolerance. Well, this time it was more uncomfortable. They put the dye through and it didn't spill out into my uterus right away, which is what they want. It took a minute and she had to keep pushing through, and then finally it did push through and spill out, and she was like, it's open. And she was very confident that it was open, but I just was like, why did it take long? She was like, it could be a little bit of endometriosis, it could be a little scar tissue from surgery, it's not a big deal. I'm like, okay. I left there not feeling good. We just try and try and try on our own, and nothing. Well, a whole year later, October 2023, I'm over everything. I am done. I'm just over it. I don't want to talk to any more doctors. I just want it to happen if it happens. I don't want to track anything, track ovulation, track sex, track my period. It was stressing me out. People say just don't stress. That is like impossible. And people say don't track, and when you have all these issues, it's hard not to track. It's just a lot to that. In October 2023, somebody shared a testimony with me about how they had been trying for 40 months to get pregnant, and they knew that this was really their last time to try because they did have other children. They had secondary infertility, and they knew that she was getting too old, but the Lord can do anything. I actually learned a story recently of a woman who was 51, my mom's friend's friend, 51, and got pregnant. So anyways, too old in our standards, but she knew that 40 months was gonna be the end, and they ended up getting pregnant right at 40 months. And I was like, well, maybe, so I calculated it, and I was like, December is my 40 months. Like December 2023 would be my 40 months of actually actively trying. And I was like, well, maybe that's it. And then I got to the end of December, nothing. And then I realized the end of that 40 months, 40 equals completion in the Bible, starting of new cycles. There's many things that it means, but it's usually completion and the starting of new. And I just realized that this would be, 40 months would be the end of trying and striving and really not being still in the Lord. And I don't say that flippantly. It is not easy. It's not easy to take your thoughts captive. It's not easy to lay it at his feet. But I was so done. I gave it up. And I said, Lord, it's your will. It's not mine. If you want to do this, you told me you were going to do it. And that's very congruent with his word. He says many times in his word, I, the Lord, will make it happen. At the right time, I, the Lord, will make it happen. I will do it. I am going to do it. And I just had to say, here, I'm done. I surrender. And so I surrendered it. I give it up to him for really the first time in all those years. I was like, I'm not going to look for anything. I'm not going to track anything. We're just going to take a break. Months go by and I'm doing pretty well, and then I see this podcast. I never listened to fertility podcasts because that type of thing just really stressed me out. But I see this podcast and the story looked really intriguing and felt in a good place. And I didn't know what NaPro technology was, which was in the title. And I was just like, what is this? I've been down every single fertility rabbit hole and I've never heard of NaPro technology. So let me just click on this. I click on it and she starts telling her story about NaPro technology and how it was a simple fix. It was just something that conventional medicine doctors had never pointed out to her, and she ended up getting pregnant. Her story was very different than mine, but I still was intrigued. I finished listening to this podcast and I'm like, let me just Google this. So I Googled NaPro technology and then trusty Google pops up NaPro technology near you, and I see this physician who is like 30 minutes away from me, and I'm like, that's weird. I've never heard of NaPro technology and she's like right there. So I just click on it. And I'm like, I know that if I click on this, she's not gonna take my insurance. We can't afford to pay these crazy out-of-pocket prices that I know that she's gonna be. Like, I was just going there, you know? And I click on it. Her profile looks amazing. It's with my Catholic doctor, and full disclosure, I'm Protestant Christian. I'm not Catholic, but you don't have to be Catholic to use my Catholic doctor. I look under insurance, and the very first one is TRICARE. And that is just like, with this type of stuff, that's kind of unheard of. And so I was like, what are you trying to show me, God? Like, why is TRICARE the first one? Even if she did take it, it would be like way down the list. I just was like, that's interesting. I look and I'm able to get in within a couple weeks. It's a telehealth appointment, and I talk with her for about an hour and a half. She listens to me for an hour and a half. She cared about me. I felt seen for the first time, which I think just now made me a little bit emotional, because I think of the story with Hagar that I actually just shared about recently, and how she struggled. She struggled so much, and God was the one who saw her. She named him the God who sees her. And that's how I felt. I felt like God sent me down this path so I could meet her and that I could be seen, and that somebody could listen to me and really help me and get down to the bottom of the root issue and not just put band-aids on everything. So I'm just going to read to you what NaPro technology is from CatholicMedicalCenter.org. NaPro technology, short for natural procreative technology, is an innovative method that respects the natural biological process of fertility. It uniquely addresses fertility by embracing a natural and holistic approach. So I know many Christians do IVF. From the Catholic practice, they don't believe in IVF. They believe in natural conception. And that doesn't mean not using medication or surgery, but it just means the act of sex is what gets you pregnant. This is not a video on IVF or any of those controversial views, but it actually worked in my favor that they did not go the route of IVF, because I knew that we weren't going down that road right now. It worked in my favor because they wanted to restore my natural fertility, and I wasn't worried about an IVF doctor wanting me to come back to do IVF, because the first one wanted me to come back and do IVF. The second one, he brought it up several times. I told him my concerns with it. He talked with me about it. He wasn't too pushy, but that's their cash cow. You know, it's $25,000 to $40,000. It's a lot. So anyways, I just felt like this really worked in my favor, that she believed in natural fertility. On our first call, she looks at my surgery report and she was concerned with the fact that my tube was only 33% open, and she wasn't concerned about me having one. It was interesting because she only has one tube, which I believe was all in the Lord's sovereignty too. She just was a little bit concerned about the tube and told me that I might need to consider another surgery. NaPro technology often uses these robots and very meticulous surgeries to help get your natural fertility restored. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, this is not what I wanted to hear today. I'm gonna write this off. We're gonna do all of the other things. They do a lot of hormone testing, a lot of more comprehensive hormone testing than an OB would do. And I'm like, that's the route. I'll do that, but I'm not doing the surgery. So I just completely wrote it off, and she didn't like keep going on it. But I was so thankful now, looking back, I'm so thankful she brought that up, because it prepared my heart. Again, the Lord is just constantly preparing my heart through this whole journey. We do a bunch of testing. My hormones are off, but they're not like absolutely terrible like they used to be. And then she thinks that we need to do another HSG. So I'll go in for this HSG, my third one. I felt a sense of dread like never before. I was just so nervous about it. I did not feel, I couldn't take anybody back there with me. I do this HSG and it's absolutely terrible. It is so painful. They keep trying to push the dye through. It won't go through. They keep trying to push it through. It won't go through. And I just feel more and more and more and more pain. All the while, there's this nurse there. And yes, she was a human, but I really felt like the Lord really ministered through her, like a ministering angel. She just felt like a guardian angel for me in that procedure. She would take my hand, she would touch my shoulders. She was standing next to me during the procedure and she was just like, are you okay? Are you okay? I know this is hard. It was just so incredibly comforting. And so the Lord was with me in that, but it was not good news. And I felt so devastated, almost even more than when the lady told me my tubes needed to be taken out. It was just another thing, years long of this, and I was like, God, I trusted you to work with this woman after I had surrendered. Why? Like, why me? Why this? Like, why does everybody else have babies so easily, get pregnant so easily? Why me? You know, I'm going down this road. And I just felt grief, just pure grief like never before. I felt like David in the Psalms where he's just like, how long, oh Lord, light up my eyes. I felt so much grief. I actually started seeing a counselor again during this time because I was just really struggling. So my doctor is very comforting. And she's like, let me take some time to talk with colleagues and figure out what we can do. It took her about a week. Normally she was very fast, and she called me on my personal cell phone and was like, I'm so sorry this took so long. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm just thankful that you even care. She researches around a lot and she finds this doctor in Omaha who's very popular and has done thousands of these corrective fertility surgeries, not necessarily this exact thing, but stuff for fertility. Actually teaches women and men around the country how to do these surgeries, and so she felt very good about her. She actually learned from her about NaPro technology as well. She did trainings with her. As I look up her profile, I feel good about it. I call the office and they are like, she has a very, very long waiting list and you are looking at months before you can even get in for a consult. So this is April of 2024 at this point, and she says that I can get in October 2024 for a consult, and then surgery would be the following year. And I'm like, okay. I was very discouraged by the long wait, but I was like, you know what? It's all in his timing. Get on the waiting list. They end up calling me the very next week and they're like, Dr. Packus actually has some cancellations and she can get you in either June or July. And I was gonna have to drive to Georgia where she was licensed because it was a telehealth appointment, so I didn't have to go to Omaha for 2 different times. So I drove a couple hours to Georgia. I see her. She is so confident, so comforting. We went through absolutely everything with my surgery. She was gonna go in and see if I had endometriosis because I also had a ton of pain and a lot of other symptoms that I haven't even covered in this video, but she was gonna first look for that and the surgery, and because I was coming from so far, she was gonna do all of this in one day. A lot of times it's in 2 separate surgeries. So they're gonna go in laparoscopically, look for endometriosis, and then they're gonna look at the tube. They're gonna do an HSG while I'm under anesthesia, and they're gonna see what's going on and where it's blocked, and then they're going to perform surgery on the tube. And she said that you have, normally you have 2 tubes, and they're actually free moving. So they're not connected on both ends like I thought and a lot of people think, but they're free flowing, and they have these little fingers on each end, and they're called fimbria. When sperm goes in and you're ovulating, they grab an egg from the ovary, and that's how the egg goes down the fallopian tube and meets the sperm. And it's crazy, but there's receptors, the same receptors that are in the sperm are also in the fingers of the fimbria, and they're attracted to each other. Our bodies are absolutely insane. I've learned so much, and I'm like, how do you not believe in God? Our bodies are so complex. So also, if you only have, I have to tell you this, if you only have 1 tube and you have 1 ovary, I have both ovaries, but one tube. But if you only have one tube and one ovary and it's on this side and your tube's on this side, the fallopian tube can literally reach over to the other side and grab an egg. It's just crazy. So they were very comforting to me about ovulating and being able to catch an egg with one tube. And she said if she opens up my tube and the fimbria are too damaged or I don't have any, she can do plastic surgery on the fimbria, which are tiny, and make new ones. And she was just saying all this stuff, and she was saying it with such confidence, and I was just like, my mind was just blown. She made me feel so much more confident. She told me all of the risks. I asked her so many questions. I just felt like I wanted to do it. But she also told me that if she went in and I had a bunch of damage from my last surgery, like scar tissue buildup and endometriosis, she would have to remove all of that. And if it was too much, she would have to put something on called Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex is to prevent scar tissue buildup within the first 10 days after surgery, because that is when the most scar tissue builds up. She explained it like when you have a scrape on your knee and you're wearing jeans and the jeans stick to the scrape. She said that sometimes like the fallopian tube can fuse to the side of your uterus, all of this stuff. So anyway, she would put on this substance, this film called Gore-Tex for 10 days, and then I would come in for a second surgery, get the Gore-Tex removed, and then I would be able to go home. And I was like, wow, this is a lot. So I went home and talked to my husband, and then he was just like, let's do it. And he was just always so supportive. I haven't even shared about him during all of this. He's been so supportive and just he's been my rock, obviously after God, but he has been such a support in this whole journey. So we get an Airbnb. My dad was so gracious in helping us get the Airbnb and coming to stay with me and help. And we fly to Omaha. We do the surgery, and it just goes so much better than expected. I wake up and I'm so disoriented, and Andres and my dad come in and they're like, it went so well. He was like, I don't think you understand how well it went. And they did find some endometriosis, but not, or endo, it's actually, I have something very rare called endosalpingosis. It's crazy, but it's a cousin to endometriosis. So I had some of that. She removed that. She was able to fix the tube. I had a perfectly healthy fimbria. She was able to open it. And I also didn't have to have the second surgery. She was like, I'm pretty positive you're gonna have to have the second, but I didn't. So I got to go home like 8 nights early or something. But anyways, we go to this appointment, this follow-up appointment with her. She shows us videos, which I did not get to see in my last surgery. She showed how she was able to cut out all of the scar tissue from my last surgery. She showed that my right ovary was fused to my uterus. She was able to fix that. She was able to completely open my tube, and when she opened it, the fimbria were so healthy she didn't have to create more. And then she showed me 2 separate times how the dye completely spilled through and came right out. She put water in my uterus and showed how when she poured the dye in that it was free flowing all throughout my uterus, which was what you wanted to see for conceiving. And in the surgery report, she was like, this was excellent news. This was a great outcome, like just so positive. And seeing the video was God's grace, because after my last surgery, I basically got nothing. He tried to show me pictures and I had no idea what I was looking at. It was so confusing. And this one, she showed literally cutting, this is graphic, but cutting open the tube. It was completely sealed off at the end. And the reason why that HSG was so painful was because dye was coming in from one side and filling up like a balloon and would not go through because of how blocked it was. And that's why it was so painful. But that's why it was so blocked off. She shows her cutting it open and then suturing it all around with permanent sutures. She even started over. She took out the sutures and did it again because she wasn't happy with the results. This woman is amazing. She is literally sent from God. And so it went so well. And they did find also an infection that I probably would not have found out about otherwise. And that was going to be easily cleared up by antibiotics. And she told us after we did the antibiotics that we could start trying again. So that's where we're at. We're in the about to start trying again phase. I am on antibiotics right now, and then we will have December to officially start trying. I felt so much peace. I felt so much peace doing the surgery. I felt so much peace after. But then I'm not gonna lie, the enemy has fed me lies. He has clouded my mind with doubt. He has planted seeds of doubt. and I just go back to God's word. One verse that I'm focusing on is Psalm 16:8. I've set the Lord always before me. Because I have him at my right hand, I cannot be shaken. And I'm so thankful for the community around me that sends me encouragement, sends me beautiful verses to encourage me. Hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. He is faithful. So when I doubt, I lift up my eyes to the Lord and he comforts me. If I go back to doubting, he will be there again to comfort me. He is not thrown off. He's not surprised. He knew every day before it began. We've been working on our foster care license for the last couple of years, which is a whole nother story in of itself. And it took us forever to do the training and everything. And we got done with everything a while ago. And I got the foster care license a week ago, which is so weird. Full circle, like foster care license and hopefully my natural fertility back all at the same time. I just don't think it's by mistake, and I'm very excited and expectant for what God's gonna do. No matter what, I know he will have a child in this house sooner rather than later. We've worked on the nursery because we have to be ready if we do take a placement for foster care. I really just want somebody to know that there are other options. I do want to say this, and I really say this so gently. Waiting is hard. It's so hard. But we see him blessing waiting. God blesses waiting. There's just so much waiting all throughout scripture. 40 years in the wilderness, 40 days in the wilderness. Sarah waiting many, many, many years to conceive. David waiting for deliverance, for rescue. All throughout scripture, we see that waiting is a part of the cycle as a believer, as somebody who trusts in the Lord. It's good for us to wait. And I'm not saying for you to wait 5 years like I have. I'm not telling you anything to do. I'm just saying to trust in the Lord and he will guide you. And I'm going to share something in James that has really been something else that I've meditated on and prayed over. James 5:7. Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. Brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord, Old Testament. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. Prayerfully walk this journey. Invite him in. He wants to be a part of it with you. I'm always here if you want to send me a message, and I really hope this helps somebody see that you are not forgotten, that you are seen, that somebody cares about you. The Lord cares so much about you, and that there are other people that have walked this journey. There could be other options. I don't know what the Lord is going to do in your situation. I don't know what he's going to do in mine, but I do know he's sure been good to me, and I know he's been good to you, and he will not stop.